Today, we're diving into the story of a New York City icon, one that was meant to go toe-to-toe with the grand cathedrals of Europe. But, you know, after more than 100 years of work, it turned into something totally different, something you might not expect, a masterpiece that's still unfinished.
So here it is, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. It's sitting up in Morningside Heights, and believe me when I say the ambition behind this place is just staggering. People often call it an American Westminster Abbey, which really gives you a sense of its importance. It's the main church for the Episcopal Diocese of New York.
But just to give you a real sense of how huge this thing is, the main hall, what they call the nave, stretches out over 600 feet. Seriously, that's like laying 2 football fields end to end, inside. And then you look up and the ceiling is soaring 124 feet above you. It's a monumental achievement, no two ways about it.
Okay, but here's where the story gets really interesting. Even after being worked on for more than 130 years, this incredible building, it's still not finished. I mean, the towers aren't all the way up, the transepts, the parts that make the cross shape, they're not complete. It's a masterpiece that's always in progress.
And that's the big question we're tackling today, right? How could a project this huge, with so much money and power behind it, still be a work in progress after all this time? Well, the answer? It's a wild story. It's got clashing visions, major historical events getting in the way, and, in the end, a total rethink of what a cathedral is even for. All right, let's get into it. The story of why this place is unfinished, it actually starts before the first stone was even laid for the cathedral. We have to go back to what was on this spot before the cathedral was even an idea. So, long before anyone called this spot the Acropolis of the New World, it was home to the Leake and Watts Orphan Asylum. And just look at this building. A beautiful Greek Revival design from the famous architect Ithiel Town. It just goes to show you, the story has layers, digging deep into New York's history.
Okay, so in 1887, the Episcopal Diocese gets a hold of the site, and what do? They launch a huge architectural competition. The goal was simple, but massive. Build something truly monumental for a city that was exploding onto the world stage. New York was becoming a global powerhouse, and it needed a cathedral to match.
And the winners? A firm called Hines and Lafarge. Their vision was this incredible kind of eclectic mix of Byzantine and Romanesque style. So think really heavy, rounded arches, massive domes. They were drawing inspiration from these ancient churches you'd see in places like Venice or Istanbul. It was a bold choice, and work finally got started in 1892.
But just as this really unique vision was starting to become a reality, with the foundation and early parts being built, everything changed. Tastes shifted. Suddenly, that whole Byzantine Romanesque look was considered, well, a bit old-fashioned. And a new idea, a more, let's say, traditional ideal, started taking over.
So what happened was one of the original architects, George Hines, passed away. And the cathedral's trustees, they brought in a new guy, a new master architect named Ralph Adams Cram. Now, Cram was a huge fan of the French Gothic style. He basically threw out the old plans and redesigned the rest of the building. The rounded arches, gone, replaced with pointed ones. The big dome, nope. Now it was all about soaring spires. It was a complete 180.
And this picture, it just shows you everything. You can literally see the clash of styles right here. You see that darker, rounded dome in the middle? That's the original plan. That's Hines and Lafarge's Romanesque part. And then you see that long, white-roofed building attached to it? That's Cram's addition. That's the French Gothic nave. It's like 2 different cathedrals got fused together. Absolutely wild.
So you'd think changing the entire architectural plan midstream would be enough of a delay, right? Well, that was just the beginning. Turns out, the 20th century, it had a few more curveballs to throw at this project.
It was just one thing after another. First, World War I stops all the work. Then, just as things are getting back on track, bam, the Great Depression hits, and fundraising dries up. And then, and you really can't make this timing up, they finally finish the magnificent nave and dedicate it in 1941. Just 7 days later, the U.S. enters World War II. Work stopped dead in its tracks again.
So by the time we get to the 1960s, not building wasn't just because of wars or money problems anymore. It actually became a choice, a deliberate decision. The bishop at the time, Bishop Dunnigan, he made this big declaration. He said the church's money should be focused on its social mission, on helping the people in the community around it. He called it mission over masonry, a whole new way of thinking.
Okay, but there's another piece to this puzzle, and it's a really fascinating one. It's almost like there's a secret code hidden inside the building itself. A code written in geometry, in glass, and in stone.
The idea here is that underneath all the chaos of its history, the changing plans, the delays, there's a kind of deeper, almost divine order to the place. And you can see it most clearly, most beautifully, if you look at the Great West Rose Window.
Now, this window looks incredibly complex, right? But what's amazing is that it all comes from a few simple geometric moves. It starts with a circle, and inside that, an 8-pointed star. Then the points where the star's lines intersect, those become the centers for a whole new set of circles. This creates an octagon, which is really symbolic. It's seen as the shape that connects the circle, representing heaven, and the square, representing earth. This entire intricate pattern flows from that pure, simple geometry.
And here's the kicker. This whole geometric masterpiece is designed to be seen from the inside. From the street, the window just looks kinda dull, gray. But when you're inside and the sunlight streams through it, it just explodes. It completely transforms into the spectacular message written in pure color and light. It's an experience.
So, all of this, the history, the clashing styles, the secret geometry, it brings us right back to where we started. But now, maybe we can look at that question a little differently. What does it actually mean for a place like this to be unfinished? You know, being unfinished is no longer seen as a failure. Not at all. Now it's its identity. That incompleteness has become its most defining characteristic. It tells this incredible story of a building that adapted, that survived, and whose whole purpose has evolved over time.
And get this, in the late 70s, they actually started building again, but with a totally new mission. They opened a stone yard right there on the cathedral grounds. And what were they doing? They were training young people from the neighborhood in the ancient art of stone cutting. The act of building became the mission. They were literally carving the future of the neighborhood right into the walls of the church. So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? St. John the Divine isn't some dusty, static relic. It's a living, breathing monument. And the fact that it's unfinished, well, that perfectly mirrors the story of New York City itself, right? Always changing, always growing, never truly finished. And that leaves us with a pretty cool thought. What if a cathedral's